My milkshake brings all the people to the rally.
And a milkshake fed over the yesterday, you did nothing.
Well, that was really pretty cool, guys. As I say though, no bullets being fired today. I enjoyed that. Hey folks, I've just been voted the sexiest politician in Britain. Could be something to do with the fact that I showed my arse on live TV or I'm just going to get me out of here. I think so. Come on guys, politics can be exciting. You know why? Because I'm back. I'm leading Reform UK. I'm standing for Parliament.
March to the stage.
This is back again.
Guess who's back? Good evening, Blackpool! Guess who's back? Back again. So I came back out of retirement to set up the Brexit Party, and we smashed it in those European elections. Within 6 weeks, we got double the number of votes of the nearest party, and we got the resignation of possibly the worst Prime Minister in British history, though there's been some competition since. It's not wrong, is it? So we got the resignation of Theresa May, that was great news, and in came bouncy Boris. Bouncy Boris. Amazing, really, isn't it, to think that we could have had a Prime Minister who refused to say in public how many children he had because he simply didn't know. I mean, you know, not that I'm a Methodist preacher or anything like that, but that did seem pretty extraordinary. And then in 2019 and later in the year, in the December...
But it was also, yesterday, my first grandchild was born. I don't think I'm ever going to forget when his birthday is or when the Brexit anniversary is. You might have noticed that we're doing rather well. There is a momentum. We are the subject of conversation around the family breakfast table. There's more conversation about reform, about me, I guess, than there is anything else going on in this campaign. I guess that's partly because Sunak and Starmer are simply so monotone, so dull, so boring, and don't say anything particularly believable. But it's also because, as the new kids on the block, we've stunned everybody just how quickly we've leapt, and on Friday we saw the first opinion poll putting us on 20%, and it was the fourth poll in 3 days that had us lying in second place across the entire United Kingdom.
Election, realising that Corbyn, who hated this country, the Liberal Democrats, who would sign us up to everything, could have won the election. I made the most difficult political decision of my life. and I stood aside in 320 seats, giving the Conservatives a free run, and they won an 80-seat majority, and we helped them. We significantly helped them. Since that date, they have literally betrayed the trust of 17.4 million people who voted for Brexit, the trust of those who put their faith in the Conservatives in 2019, the trust and to some extent the reputation of me, who gave them the benefit of the doubt. And you all know in Blackpool, one of the biggest reasons we voted Brexit, yes, of course it was about getting back control of our country. Of course it was about us, through a democratic system that our forebears fought for. And didn't the recent shenanigans in D-Day just sum up where the heart of this Prime Minister really is?
Well, thank you very much indeed for that wonderful response. Can you hear me at the back? Bad luck. I'd retired. It was all done. I was enjoying life. There, I know. People like you that have got me back. I packed up. I thought I've achieved the goal, everything I really set out to do. A government elected 5 years ago, committed to delivering the Brexit we fought for, campaigned for, and voted for. And I'm back because the political establishment, left to its own devices, has completely betrayed the 2019 Conservative vote and indeed 17.4 million Brexiteers. We've been betrayed, and I tell you what, I have decided we are not going to take it any longer. We're going to fight back and we're going to win.
I can see a fiscal and monetary hawk sitting over there. Our national debt has almost trebled since the Conservatives came to power in 2010. Oh, they say it's not our fault. We had to deal with COVID. Well, you didn't have to lock us down, did you? Time and time and time again. You didn't have to put people on furlough forever. It wasn't necessary. You didn't have to tell us you're going to take away freedoms that weren't even lost to people in World War II. So tell us we had to wear masks that were totally useless or be fined. That we had to vaccinate children who weren't even going to suffer any complications from COVID, apart from a few very exceptional cases. These arguments and excuses take us away from the fact, folks, we're skint. We are skint. Every single year, the government spends more than it earns. And we cannot go on living like this forever. We have to be frank. We have to be honest. If we don't cure this, then we really will see cuts, genuine cuts, to public services and all the things that we need to live our lives. But there's no imagination, there's no change of the economic model, and our belief is this. The two big parties are in an unholy alliance with big international business and the big banks, and that is all they care about. And what we care about are the 5.5 million men and women in Britain running their own businesses, acting as sole traders. They don't get sick pay or holiday or time off. They have VAT levels that are ludicrously low. Corporation tax charged on them went up by 30% last year. They're burdened by IR35 rules that make it so difficult for self-employed contractors to work as drivers or work for building companies. I don't think Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer even understand this. They don't get how government is actually driving down the incentive to go out, take a risk, and really have a go. And we believe the only way out of this mess, the way for us to get back to a balanced budget, the way for us to start paying back some of this debt, and by the way, that debt repayment is now £90 billion a year. That's the interest. And that is on a par with the education budget, which is ironic, because it's that generation that are going to have this millstone around their necks for the whole of their working lives. And no one is talking straight. No one is being honest about it. We believe the way out is to trust the hard work, to trust the entrepreneurship. We will only get out of this mess if the men and women of our country are freed from regulation, which was promised with Brexit and not delivered, freed from ridiculous levels at which VAT starts to be paid. We want a revolution in Britain of people setting up companies, becoming self-employed, going out, making themselves money, employing people, paying tax. Our vision is for a Britain where people work, where people are rewarded, and where we fight our way out of this debt. It will not happen relying on big business. It won't happen. We voted to get back control of our country. We voted to honour those that went before us and made the sacrifice so that we could be free. We voted so that our children and grandchildren could live in that freedom and liberty. But we voted to get back control of our borders. We voted to reduce mass immigration on a scale that these islands had never seen. And what have the Tories done? What have they done? They have no, they haven't done nothing. You're wrong about that. Go to the bottom of the class. They've made it worse. Go to the top of the class. Made it worse. Think about this, folks. Net migration into our country from Windrush right up until Tony Blair got elected ran at 40, 50,000 a year. And it ran for that for 50 years. And you could say, by the end of the last century, that we had the best levels of integration and assimilation of those who'd come from different countries and different cultures of any country in Europe. And I think it was something, actually, we were really rather proud of. Because we've always had, as a nation, big relationships around the rest of the world. In fact, we're the only people in the history of mankind who had an empire that turned into a Commonwealth club of friends. We even play sport with each other. We even like the Australians on good days, you know.
And I think we're closer to a very big breakthrough than some of those disreputable opinion polls in yesterday's Sunday newspapers tried to imply. I have written to Professor Green, the head of the British Polling Council, and I very much hope that the polling industry becomes honest. Otherwise, I'll have a fight with them. Like I had a fight with the banks last year. I can't wait. It's up to them. It really, really is.
I am completely unafraid of authority. I'm unafraid of criticism. I don't want to be popular in the political class. I don't want to go to their poxy Notting Hill dinner parties anyway. No. I'd rather be in the Armfield Club in Blackpool watching the football. I've got to tell you, that was pretty full on in there earlier. I mean, goodness gracious me. So voting for us is now like an open shot on goal. Voting for us will make us the opposition voice, which is going to be so badly needed. This Labour government have nothing to say. Nothing to say on any major issue. This country, right now, I'm sad to say, that Britain is broken. It's broken. We are broken economically. Our productivity levels are now down below that of the French, which is incomprehensible. I mean, I didn't think the French worked after lunch, you know.
Who
believes that the planes are off to Rwanda in a couple of weeks? Come on, hands up. What a cynical audience, I don't know. But also, they're going to reduce the level of immigration into Britain. Short history lesson. The Conservative Manifesto of 2010 said, after Blair had opened the doors in the most unprecedented way, the 2010 manifesto said they would reduce net migration to tens of thousands. The 2015 Conservative Manifesto said they would reduce net migration to tens of thousands. And still people believe them. Because in 2017, anyone having a guess what they said in 2017? We will reduce net migration to tens of thousands, and then, with the big 2019 general election vote on the back of the Brexit Party standing aside in all those seats, giving Boris a free run, they talked about huge reductions in the amount of unskilled labour coming into the country. If they failed us on the last 4 manifesto pledges, why on earth would anyone believe them on the 5th? I don't, and I don't believe the British public will be gulled by them either. And just think about the numbers. Do you realise 1 in 30 people in this country, think about this, 1 in 30 people in this country has come in the last 2 years alone. It's mind-blowing.
No, the Pope in 2022, it's not often the Pope and I are on the same side of any debate particularly. I'm a bit more Henry VIII, you know. But the Pope made this point in 2022. George Kennan, who for years was Director of Policy in the US State Department, begged and urged the Clinton administration not to make the mistake of creeping ever eastwards. George Robertson, the former Secretary General of NATO, said a few months ago that the EU's accession agreement to Ukraine was a mistake that was used by Putin. But no, it's me. I'm the bad guy, and I'm all over the front page of the Daily Mail for daring to stand by what I said all those years ago.
It's as if everything about our politics is designed to stop new boys and girls coming in and to keep everything the same. At the moment, broadcasters are giving our party 8% of their coverage, which clearly is nowhere near in line with where we actually are. But there's something else I want to ask for today. The BBC will be having a leaders' debate, a 4-way leaders' debate with the leader of the Liberal Democrats, the Conservatives, Labour and the SNP, and that takes place next week. And I think we can demand of right now that the BBC put us into that debate. I would also very much like to do a debate head-to-head with Keir Starmer. And the reason is very simple. We think that this should be the immigration election, because whether we're talking about rents, whether we're talking about housing availability, whether we're talking about access to GP services, whether we're talking about pressure on infrastructure, there is no aspect of our national life that is not touched by the massive population crisis this country now faces, directly as a result of immigration policies that were started by Labour but accelerated by this Conservative government. And I thought it was very interesting to see the Labour manifesto where Keir Starmer lays out his 6 priorities for the country. And not one of those 6 was mass migration into Britain. So we're very much of the view that nothing will change under Labour. Who knows? It may even get a little bit worse. I would love, as I'm now the leader of the opposition, I would now love... Well, I thought that was fairly obvious to everybody. I would love to do a head-to-head with Keir Starmer to ask him why. Why, if you're going out looking for the working people of Britain to vote for you, have you not put this in your top 6 priorities?
And by the way, I was alone. I was the only person in 2014 who said there will be a war in Ukraine. I can't take those words away, and nor would I want to. The fact that I was more far-sighted than the rest of our political leaders is not something that I'm going to apologise for.
That I believe I can be that voice of opposition. I'm pretty clear and consistent in what I stand up for. I'm not afraid of a fight. I don't bow to Twitter pressure or the mob on the streets. I've taken on the European Union, I've taken on the big banks, and I'm pretty certain I can take on a Labour government headed by Keir Starmer that will have almost no honeymoon period whatsoever, will inherit some very, very deep problems, and I don't think has the radical solutions to sort the country out.
This is what Boris said. Boris blames the European Union for war in Ukraine. The former mayor is called a Putin apologist after challenging Brussels expansionism. Well, perhaps it's Boris Johnson that's morally repugnant and not me, I don't know. But can you see the sheer level of hypocrisy?
When a young woman threw a milkshake in my face, and then the mob violence that we saw in Barnsley today is an attempt to stop me speaking. It's an attempt to stop us campaigning. It's an attempt to crush democracy. It is worrying. It is frightening. And it's noticeable that most of the people there today were young men and women either at or freshly out of our university system. Their minds are being poisoned in school, in university, and it's plain wrong. Now, for me, this is very difficult because I actually like going out, meeting people. I'm perfectly happy. You can disagree with me. You can call me rude names. If you think about it, when we commemorated those last remnants of that generation that engineered and took part in D-Day last week, well, some of us commemorated it, others went home early, but I mean, there you are.
I hardly need tell you the catastrophic failures we've seen under President Biden. The withdrawal from Afghanistan, the handing of it back over to the Taliban after 20 years was the sign of weakness that was seen by Putin, the sign of weakness that is increasingly being seen by China, or China, as a friend of mine calls it. And of course it was the Abraham Accords, those incredible series of deals that were done between Israel and Arab states, something that happened towards the end of the last presidential term, something that Saudi Arabia was about to join, that has led directly to the attacks that we've seen on October the 7th and the awful things that are going on in the Middle East ever since. We have a war in Ukraine. We have a war in the Middle East, and who knows, potentially China will go for Taiwan.
And my promise is this: I will not surrender to the mob. I will not stop campaigning. This democratic process must continue. Now, as June said earlier, something is going on out there. This party, this campaign has got real momentum. Millions of people around the breakfast table on Sunday were talking about reform. What is it? What's it all about? Many more millions are weighing up as we speak exactly what they're going to do on July the 4th. We are making an incredible impact. The last poll put out by YouGov an hour and a half ago has us now nationally, and that includes, of course, England, Scotland and Wales, has us just 1 point behind the Conservatives. And we are leading. We are leading the Conservatives, albeit Labour are way ahead, but we're leading the Conservatives in the North East. We're leading them in Yorkshire and the Humber. We're leading them in the North West. We're leading them in the East Midlands, in the West Midlands, and in many, many seats here in Eastern Region. Something remarkable is about to happen.
Think of the lies we were given over going to war in Iraq. Plain, outright lies, but supported by the Labour Party and supported by the Conservative Party at massive cost to us and the loss of hundreds of thousands of lives in Iraq. And think of the total stupidity of Cameron and at the time Sarkozy deciding that a war in Libya was a good idea. And I opposed Iraq publicly, and I opposed Libya very publicly. The result of the Libyan war has been the creation of ISIS. They didn't even exist before the Libyan war, and no boats were crossing the Mediterranean, no boats were crossing the Mediterranean until the Libyan war.
You know, I've got into this with a 5-year commitment. This is not just about a big hit on July the 4th, it's about becoming the opposition party in British politics with an aim to be the biggest party in the country by 2029. They're my aims, they're my ambitions. And don't worry, you won't hear too much about gender ideology from me. But you'll hear an awful lot about education. I am sick to death of our kids being taught like this. The idea that, 8-year-old Johnny, who's white, is told he's an oppressor, and the 8-year-old black boy is told he's a victim. What kind of message is that to give children? This doesn't unite us, it divides us. And as Rupert said earlier, people shouldn't get jobs according to their sexual preference. I couldn't care less what people's sexual preference is. I'd rather they kept it to themselves, quite frankly. People should get on ability. People should succeed on hard work. And actually, let's be, as a party, let's unashamedly say, we think hard work is good. We think success is good. We want to encourage that. Because I tell you what's happening, a lot of our young, bright people are now leaving this country. They're going to Lisbon, they're going to Milan, many others are off to Dubai. For the older people in the audience, they'll remember the brain drain of the 1970s, when our brightest and best young accountants, young doctors, were leaving the country in ever larger numbers. We're back to that. We have to have a Britain that is optimistic, a Britain that wants to create wealth, a Britain that believes that actually success should be good, and a Britain that actually goes back on law and order and says,
I scarcely need to tell you that the British population has risen by 10 million since Tony Blair came to power. 6 million of that since the Conservatives came to power. Blair opened the door to mass unskilled labour in a way we'd never even approached anything like in the entirety of our history. And all the Conservatives have done, despite Boris's promises, is to actually increase it. Net migration, which ran from the late 1940s until nearly the millennium at 30 to 40,000 a year, is now running at nearly 750,000 a year.
It's unbelievable. You can go shoplifting and nick up to 200 quid's worth before anybody even prosecutes you. What kind of message is that? How have we got so many young people being seriously wounded or dying through knife injuries? Tell the police, use their powers. Let's get stop and search happening in our high streets every Saturday.